The calendar invite hit my inbox at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday subject line, quick sync with Vanessa, Monday 9 a.m. No agenda, no context, just a meeting request that felt like a digital death sentence. Because here's the thing about Vanessa from HR, she doesn't do quick syncs. She does performance improvement plans, exit interviews, and the kind of conversations that end with security walking you to your car clutching a cardboard box full of shame and desk succulents. I stared at that invite for a solid 3 minutes, watching the cursor blink like a heartbeat monitor in a hospital room. My stomach dropped to somewhere around my ankles because I knew. I fucking knew what this was about. The layoffs had been circling our company like vultures for weeks. Whispered conversations in the break room, people disappearing from Slack channels without explanation. Whole departments suddenly going quiet like someone had flipped a switch on their existence. And now it was my turn. Now Vanessa wanted her quick sync. Now I was the one getting fitted for a corporate coffin. But here's where the story gets interesting, because while I was sitting there contemplating whether to update my LinkedIn profile or just burn it all down and become a park ranger, something else was happening. Something that would turn this whole nightmare into the kind of revenge story that makes middle managers break out in cold sweats. I opened Twitter. Not because I had anything profound to say, but because doom scrolling felt appropriate for the moment. And that's when I saw it trending number 3 in the United States, #layoffleaks. Some anonymous account had started posting screenshots of internal company communications about layoffs. Not just any layoffs, but layoffs from major corporations, complete with executive names, dates, dollar amounts saved, and the most damning part, employee rankings based on perceived value to the company. I scrolled through the thread, my coffee getting cold, my pulse getting faster. Because this wasn't just corporate gossip. This was a data dump of biblical proportions. Companies were getting their dirty laundry aired in real time, and the internet was eating it up like it was the season finale of their favorite show. The screenshots were devastating emails from CEOs talking about human capital optimization, like people were software licenses to be downgraded, expense reports showing executive retreats that cost more than entire department budgets, meeting transcripts where leadership discussed employee loyalty scores and retention probabilities like they were managing a fantasy football league. One thread showed a pharmaceutical company's internal memo ranking employees by family size, reasoning that people with kids would be less likely to quit after layoffs. Another revealed a tech startup's algorithm for determining layoff order based on social media activity, salary history, and something called culture fit metrics, which apparently meant how often you laughed at the CEO's jokes in meetings. Then I saw a reply from someone with the handle Vengeance. Vibes asking, does anyone have dirt on Pinnacle Solutions, because apparently they're laying off half their marketing team while giving the CEO a $3 million bonus. My company, Pinnacle Solutions. My department, marketing. My bonus non-existent. While our CEO, Camden Rothwell, just bought his 3rd vacation home in the Hamptons. And that's when lightning struck, because I had dirt. Not just dirt, but a whole archaeological dig worth of evidence sitting in my personal Google Drive, where I'd been quietly documenting every stupid decision, every wasteful expense, every breathtakingly incompetent leadership move for the past 18 months. Not because I planned to use it, but because watching this place burn through money while preaching about belt tightening was like watching a slow-motion car crash. You can't look away from if you're still watching this corporate espionage masterpiece, then hit that subscribe button, because we're about to watch me turn a layoff into a public execution, and trust me, the best part hasn't even started yet. I had screenshots of emails where Camden complained about spending money on employee benefits, while simultaneously approving a $200,000 office renovation that included a meditation pod. Nobody used a juice bar that served $15 smoothies, and a collaborative workspace with beanbag chairs that cost more than most people's cars. I had expense reports showing executive team dinners that cost more than some people's monthly salaries, including a $23,000 celebration dinner for closing a deal that resulted in 50 employees getting laid off. 2 weeks later, I had meeting notes where they discussed cutting health insurance coverage while expanding the executive parking garage to accommodate Camden's new Tesla collection and Yes collection, because apparently one electric vanity mobile wasn't enough. I had Slack conversations where department heads joked about which employees they could lose without anyone noticing, rating people by their perceived dispensability like they were sorting through old clothes for donation. I had performance review templates that included questions about employee financial stability, reasoning that desperate people work harder and complain less. I had the crown jewel of my collection, an email thread where Vanessa herself had suggested ranking employees by revenue generation to make layoff decisions easier, essentially treating human beings like stock options to be bought and sold at will, the thread included. Her proposal for a points-based system where employees lost points for taking sick days, using mental health benefits, or failing to attend optional weekend team-building events, but gained points for working unpaid overtime, bringing in new clients, or what she called demonstrating cultural alignment, which meant laughing at management jokes and never questioning company decisions. I'd kept all of this stuff initially just as a way to stay sane in an insane workplace, like a digital diary of corporate dysfunction. But now looking at that Twitter thread, watching companies get dragged through the digital mud, I realized I was sitting on a nuclear bomb. And Monday morning, Vanessa was going to give me the perfect excuse to detonate it. The weekend felt like the calm before a hurricane. I spent Saturday morning crafting my response. Not the angry rant you might expect, but something surgical, precise, devastating. I created a burner Twitter account called Corporate Karma and started threading together the most damning evidence from my collection. But I didn't just dump everything at once. No. This required strategy timing. The kind of methodical destruction that leaves no room for corporate spin or damage control. I spent hours organizing the evidence, creating a narrative arc that would tell the complete story of corporate greed and employee exploitation. I categorized everything by theme: executive excess, employee devaluation, systemic discrimination, financial manipulation. Each category had multiple pieces of supporting evidence: screenshots, emails, meeting notes, expense reports, audio recordings from company, all hands where leadership said the quiet parts out loud. I started with the email about ranking employees like cattle posted at 11:30 p.m. Sunday night with the caption, "Tomorrow I'm getting laid off." But before I go, here's how my company really sees its employees. The screenshot showed Vanessa's email in all its dehumanizing glory: subject line, workforce optimization matrix with bullet points about revenue per employee, retention probability, and something called succession risk assessment, which was code for how easily they could replace you. The engagement was immediate. Retweets started flooding in, comments expressing outrage, solidarity, and a surprising amount of people sharing their own similar experiences. People were tagging business journalists, labor advocates, even a few verified accounts with serious follower counts. The Layoff Leaks account retweeted it within 20 minutes, and suddenly my little thread was getting thousands of views. But that was just the appetizer. The main course was scheduled for Monday morning. Right after my quick sync with Vanessa, I set up a scheduled tweet feature, something I'd never used before but was about to become my new favorite toy. 12 tweets, scheduled to go live at 30-minute intervals starting at 10 a.m. each one, containing a different piece of evidence, each one building on the last like a legal case presented to the court of public opinion. Tweet 1, the executive expense reports showing Camden's $47,000 team-building retreat in Cabo, complete with private yacht rental and Michelin-starred catering, while simultaneously denying cost of living adjustments to employees who hadn't seen a raise in 3 years. Tweet 2, the office renovation costs, including itemized receipts for the meditation pod that cost $18,000 and had been used exactly 0 times, according to the building access logs I'd pulled from the security system. Tweet 3, in the meeting notes about health insurance cuts, where they calculated that eliminating mental health coverage would save them $2.3 million annually while budgeting $3 million for executive wellness retreats. Tweet 4, the parking garage expansion priorities, including architectural plans for climate-controlled spaces for executive vehicles, while employee parking remained a gravel lot with potholes that could swallow a smart car. Tweet 5, the executive team dinner receipts, including the celebration dinner, where they toasted laying off the entire customer service department while ordering wine that cost more per bottle than those employees made in a week. Tweet 6, the Slack conversation, where department heads joked about disposable employees, including a particularly charming exchange where the VP of sales referred to customer service reps as emotional labor drones who could be replaced by chatbots. Tweet 7, the bonus structure disparity, showing that executive bonuses had increased by 40%, while employee salaries had been frozen for 2 years running. Tweet 8, the layoff decision tree based on perceived value, including flowcharts that look like they'd been designed by someone who thought human resources meant managing livestock. Tweet 9, the CEO's third home purchase announcement sent to the executive team the same day they announced company-wide budget cuts and hiring freezes. Tweet 10, the company's public statements about financial hardship compared to their actual financial reports showing record profits and cash reserves that could fund operations for the next 5 years. Tweet 11, the employee ranking system that included metrics like family obligations, meaning parents were considered less valuable, compliance probability, meaning how likely someone was to accept abuse without complaining, and what they called culture metric alignment, which was newspeak for how well you kissed ass. Tweet 12, the smoking gun and email from Camden himself saying we need to get leaner on personnel costs while maximizing shareholder value. These people don't understand that we're running a business, not a charity, followed by a detailed breakdown of how much they could save by eliminating what he called deadweight positions. Each tweet was a precision strike designed to dismantle their narrative piece by piece to show the world exactly what kind of people were making these decisions and why their quick sync was about to become the most expensive meeting they'd ever scheduled. I also prepared what I called the nuclear option, a video recording from a company all-hands meeting where Camden had explicitly stated that employee loyalty was a quaint concept and that anyone who couldn't handle the new reality of constant uncertainty should probably find work elsewhere. The recording captured not just his words, but the nervous laughter from management and the dead silence from everyone else. It was the kind of smoking gun that turns viral threads into congressional hearings. Monday morning came like a digital apocalypse. I woke up, checked my phone, and saw that my Sunday night post had exploded. Overnight, 17,000 retweets, 43,000 likes, and climbing the comment section had turned into a support group for corporate abuse survivors. People sharing their own layoff horror stories, tagging news outlets, demanding accountability. Someone had created a separate hashtag CorporateKarmaAtPinnacle that was gaining traction independently, I made coffee. Got dressed in my best fuck you business casual outfit and walked into the office like I was attending my own funeral. Except I was the one holding the shovel and I'd already started digging graves. The hallways felt different that morning, charged with the kind of energy you get when a storm is coming. People were huddled around computers whispering about the Twitter thread that was making rounds. Someone in accounting had printed out screenshots and was passing them around like underground newsletters during a revolution. The marketing intern Jackson whispered to me as I passed his cube, "Holy shit, Ashley. Someone's really going after this place. The threat is everywhere." I smiled and whispered back, "Sometimes karma needs a little help finding its target." The facilities manager, Delilah, caught my eye from across the hall and gave me a knowing nod. She'd been here longer than anyone had seen every round of layoffs, every executive power grab, every broken promise about employee appreciation. She didn't say anything, but her expression told me she knew exactly who was behind the digital revolution, currently dismantling our employer's reputation. I could feel eyes on me as I walked to my desk, some suspicious, some sympathetic, but all of them knowing that something was happening, something big, something that would probably end with someone's head on a pike. The energy was infectious. People were walking taller, speaking louder. There was a sense that finally someone had said what everyone was thinking, that the emperor had no clothes, and everyone could see his naked greed hanging out for the world to judge at exactly 9 a.m. My computer pinged with a Slack notification from Vanessa, ready for our meeting. "Ashley, conference room C." I typed back, "Absolutely looking forward to it," which in retrospect was probably the most honest thing I'd said to HR in my entire career. Conference room C was one of those sterile corporate spaces with motivational posters about teamwork and a whiteboard that still had remnants of someone's half-erased quarterly projections. The irony of discussing my elimination in a room decorated with inspirational quotes about valued employees and family culture was so thick you could cut it with a severance agreement. Vanessa was already there, sitting with her laptop open and wearing the kind of sympathetic expression that HR people practice in the mirror. The same expression she probably used when explaining why the company couldn't afford raises while approving executive compensation packages that included private jet allowances. She gestured for me to sit down, and I did, crossing my legs and folding my hands like I was at a job interview. Except this time, I was interviewing them on their competency as human beings. "Ashley," she began with that practiced HR warmth that feels like getting hugged by a robot. "I wanted to touch base about some organizational changes we're implementing." Organizational changes. That's beautiful, Vanessa. Very corporate. Very sanitized. Much better than saying we're firing you because you cost money and executives need bigger bonuses. I smiled politely. "Oh, the layoffs, you mean?" She blinked clearly, not expecting such directness. "Well, we prefer to call them right-sizing initiatives to ensure optimal resource allocation." Yes, optimal resource allocation. Like people were office supplies being redistributed for maximum efficiency. Like I was a printer that had become redundant in the age of digital communication. "Of course," I said, checking my phone discreetly. 9:47 a.m. 3 more minutes until the first scheduled tweet went live. "How many people are you right-sizing today?" Her smile faltered just slightly. "Well, each situation is unique, and we're handling these conversations individually with the utmost care and respect." Translation: "We're firing a bunch of people, but we want each of you to feel special during your execution, like you're getting a personalized death sentence instead of being part of a mass corporate murder." "That's so thoughtful of you, Vanessa," really shows how much the company values its employees, even when it's firing them. She opened her laptop and pulled up what looked like a script, because apparently even laying people off required corporate talking points probably developed by the same consulting firm that helped them optimize their tax avoidance strategies. Ashley, your position as Senior Marketing Coordinator is being eliminated. Effective today due to budget constraints and strategic realignment. We're prepared to offer you a severance package that includes 2 weeks' pay and continuation of benefits for 30 days budget constraints. That's rich. Considering the executive team just approved funding for Camden's executive coaching program with a consultant who charges $5,000 per session to teach leaders how to be more authentic while systematically eliminating the people who make their company function. I let her finish the whole speech about how this wasn't a reflection of my performance, how the company valued my contributions, how they hoped I'd consider them for future opportunities. When budget allowed. It was beautiful, really, like watching someone read their own obituary with a straight face while insisting they were in perfect health. When she finished, I smiled and said, "That's interesting timing," and right on cue, my phone buzzed with the notification that tweet number 1 had just gone live, the first domino in what was about to become a digital avalanche. Vanessa glanced at her own phone, probably checking messages, and her face went through a series of expressions that would have been hilarious if they weren't so satisfying. Confusion, alarm, recognition, and finally something approaching pure terror. "Ashley," she said slowly, "did you something happen this weekend that I think you should know about?" The beauty of that moment was watching her realize that her carefully scripted conversation was about to become completely unscripted. That the power dynamic she'd assumed would remain constant was shifting in real time like tectonic plates before an earthquake. I pulled out my phone and opened Twitter, refreshing the page to show the growing engagement numbers. "Oh, this. You mean?" I turned the screen toward her so she could see the thread that was currently burning through the internet like wildfire. Her face went white. Actually white, like someone had just told her the building was on fire and she was trapped on the 50th floor. This is confidential company information," she stammered. "How did you get access to these emails?" Her voice cracked on the word emails like she was choking on her own corporate doublespeak. "Funny thing about confidential information, Vanessa, it stops being confidential when you send it to someone and that someone happens to save it for posterity, especially when that someone is about to be fired for budget constraints while watching executives spend her annual salary on a single dinner." I tilted my head with mock concern. "You look upset. Is everything okay?" The retweets were climbing past, the 100-mark engagement was exploding, and more importantly, local news accounts were starting to pick up the story. Business reporters were sliding into Midens. Labor advocates were asking for interviews. This wasn't just going viral, it was becoming a movement. I could see the exact moment she realized the scope of what was happening. Could see her mental calculator trying to figure out the potential damage. At the legal exposure, and the public relations nightmare that was currently unfolding in real time while she sat there with her script about budget constraints and strategic realignment. She reached for her phone. Probably to call legal or communications, or maybe just to delete her own social media accounts. But I held up a hand. "There's more," I said almost gently, like I was offering her a tissue instead of handing her a digital death warrant. And right on schedule. Another tweet went live. This one with the executive expense reports. The ones showing Camden's $47,000 team building retreat in Cabo while denying cost of living adjustments to employees who hadn't seen a raise in 3 years. Vanessa stared at her phone, watching the engagement numbers climb. watching the comments pour in, watching her company's reputation get dissected in real time by an increasingly angry mob of internet vigilantes who had found their target and were aiming with the precision of trained snipers. "We need to call legal," she said, standing up abruptly. "We need to stop this immediately." Her panic was intoxicating, like watching someone realize they'd been playing chess while everyone else was playing poker, and they'd just gone, all in with a pair of twos. I remained seated, calm as a lake before a storm, but this is all public information now. Vanessa, the emails, the expense reports, the meeting notes, all of it obtained legally by someone who was employed by the company when these communications were sent. Someone who's about to be unemployed through no fault of her own. Someone who no longer has any reason to protect the company's reputation. The room felt smaller, suddenly like the walls were closing in. She was pacing now, phone pressed to her ear, trying to reach someone, anyone who could make this nightmare stop, but the tweets kept coming every 30 minutes like clockwork. Each one a precision strike against the company's public image, each one backed up with screenshots. Documentation proof. The kind of evidence that destroys careers, ends executive tenures, and sometimes launches congressional investigations. As the morning wore on, the story started getting picked up by bigger accounts. Business journalists, labor advocates, people with verified check marks and follower counts that could make or break a company's stock price. The local business journal called wanting a statement. The regional news station sent a reporter to the parking lot. Employees were being ambushed with questions about working conditions and executive compensation by 11:30. The hashtag CorporateKarmaAtPinnacle was trending in 3 cities. Local news stations were calling the main office asking for comments. And according to the Slack messages I could still access before they cut off my account, Camden himself was in full damage control mode, calling emergency meetings with the board, the legal team, and probably his crisis management consultant. If he was smart enough to have one, which based on the evidence was questionable, the beautiful irony was that their quick sync to eliminate my position had turned into the most expensive 30-minute meeting in company history. Because while they were busy explaining to me why I was redundant, I was busy showing the world exactly why they were incompetent, and the internet had rendered its verdict guilty as charged with prejudice. By noon, 3 more scheduled tweets had gone live, each one adding another layer to the narrative of corporate excess and employee exploitation. The meditation pod receipts went viral independently. Someone created a meme comparing the cost of the unused wellness space to the salaries of the laid-off customer service team. The parking garage expansion plans sparked outrage from local environmental groups who pointed out the company's sustainability pledges while building climate-controlled garages for luxury vehicles. And the executive dinner receipts became a symbol of everything wrong with corporate priorities. People were doing math in the comments, calculating how many employee salaries could have been funded with the money spent on executive indulgence. But the real explosion came with tweet number 6, the Slack conversation, where department heads joked about disposable employees. The casual cruelty of referring to customer service reps as emotional labor drones went beyond viral. It became a rallying cry. Labor organizers picked it up. Disability rights. Advocates shared it with commentary about dehumanizing language and business ethics. Professors started using it in case studies about toxic corporate culture. The engagement numbers were staggering, but more importantly, the story was spreading beyond Twitter. Mainstream media was picking it up. Financial analysts were questioning the company's leadership. Business schools were adding it to their curriculum about corporate social responsibility. Failures. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was becoming a cultural touchstone. The final tweet went live at 2:30 p.m. just as I was packing up my desk for the last time. It was simple. Elegant. Devastating a side-by-side comparison of Camden's latest bonus announcement. Next to the layoff notice they just handed me with the caption, "This is what corporate leadership looks like when you're not important enough to matter." The engagement was nuclear, thousands of shares, hundreds of comments. And most importantly, legitimate news outlets were now covering the story as an example of corporate excess. During economic hardship, business reporters were calling it a case study in how not to handle layoffs. Labor advocates were using it to illustrate systemic problems with executive compensation, structures, and social media experts were analyzing it as a masterclass in strategic information release. Vanessa appeared at my desk one last time, looking like she'd aged a decade. In 6 hours, her carefully applied makeup had smudged, her professional demeanor had cracked, and she was holding her phone like it might explode. "Legal wants to talk," she said, voice strained about a possible settlement. "They want to discuss terms for removing the posts and signing a comprehensive NDA. I looked up from packing my coffee mug into the cardboard box. They'd provided the same box that was supposed to contain my professional dignity, but instead had become a prop in my corporate theater piece, a settlement for what accurately reporting information that was sent to me by company employees during my employment here. Nothing I've shared was obtained illegally, falsified, or taken out of context. Everything I posted was documented. Communication that I received as part of my job responsibilities." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. "Settlement suggests wrongdoing." Vanessa. "And the only wrongdoing here was thinking you could discard people without consequences, thinking you could treat employees like disposable assets while executives live like kings, thinking you could have a quick sync on a Monday morning without someone deciding to sync back." I stood up, picked up my box, and walked toward the elevator, the same elevator I'd taken every morning for 3 years, the same elevator that had carried me through performance reviews, team meetings, company announcements about family values, and employee appreciation, the same elevator that would take me out of this building for the last time. But as the doors closed and I watched the floors tick down toward freedom, my phone buzzed with a notification that made me smile for the first time all day. A message from a reporter at the Business Journal asking if I'd be willing to do an interview about corporate layoff practices and employee rights. The story was no longer just a viral thread. It was becoming a movement, and they'd just handed me the microphone by 6 p.m. The story had been picked up by major news outlets. The Business Journal ran a front-page story about executive compensation during layoffs. The local television station led their evening news with coverage of employee treatment at major corporations, and national business media was calling it a watershed moment for corporate accountability. Company stock had dropped 12%, and according to LinkedIn, Camden had retained a crisis management firm that specialized in executive reputation. Repair, the kind of firm that charged more per day than most employees made in a month. By the end of the week, 3 other employees had come forward with their own stories of corporate misconduct. 2 board members had called for an investigation into executive compensation practices, and the hashtag had spawned copycat threads from employees at dozens of other companies, all sharing their own evidence of corporate malfeasance. Labor organizers reached out about using my case as an example. In Union Drive's business schools requested interviews for case studies about corporate ethics failures, and most satisfying of all, Camden's crisis management. Consultant quit after 2 weeks, citing irreconcilable differences with the client. Which is consultant speak for your boss is an irredeemable asshole. The layoff was supposed to eliminate my position. Instead, it eliminated their credibility, their stock price, and eventually their CEO, who quietly resigned 2 months later, citing personal reasons. Which is corporate speak for the board finally grew a spine and fired him. I never did take that settlement offer. Why would I? When the truth was so much more valuable than their hush money. Instead, I started a consulting business helping other employees document workplace misconduct. And guess what? My first client was a former Pinnacle Solutions employee who'd been inspired by my thread to start collecting evidence of ongoing labor violations. Turns out when you show people it's possible to fight back, they remember they have spines. The beautiful thing about corporate karma is that it compounds like interest. The more you give, the more you get back. And sometimes the universe hands you exactly the platform you need to make sure the people who tried to disappear, you end up disappearing themselves. And here's the kicker. 6 months later, when the company was struggling to rebuild their reputation and desperately trying to hire back experienced employees, they reached out to my consulting firm asking for help with employee retention and workplace culture improvement. The irony was so perfect, it could have been scripted by the same comedy writers who named their layoffs right-sizing initiatives. I politely declined their business, but I did offer them one piece of free advice. Next time you want to have a quick sync with someone, maybe check their Twitter account first. Thanks for watching you. Magnificent corporate rebels, hit that subscribe button unless you're an HR director planning layoffs. Then maybe just close the browser and reconsider your life choices because Karma has a Twitter account now and she's not afraid to use it.